The number 5 case on my list right now is going to be going to the gallery case. Now this case is definitely one that's in a very interesting predicament. Obviously it's a discontinued case, but the momentum really hasn't picked up for it all across the board. It's currently sitting at a price point that's significantly cheaper than what we were seeing just a couple weeks ago, which makes sense. The whole market, relatively speaking, is in this position, but the gallery case is one that's discontinued, so we didn't think it would see drop that far in my personal opinion. Obviously when we're talking about the gallery case, we gotta look at the fever case as well, and we will in a little bit, but I definitely think the gallery case can still stand alone. The unboxing numbers are nothing insane anymore, but if you want to look at all the fundamentals of a case, this is exactly what we're looking for. It's in a situation where I don't think it's going to absolutely explode because it already saw that growth, but I actually don't think it's going to be falling much further. I think it's in a very strong position to buy. It's one of the cheapest price points we've seen since removal, and therefore I don't think that honestly it's a bad position to be in. Skinland is today's sponsor, and they're also sponsoring you with a free $10 on your first trade using code MasterShiny. And the best part is you're going to be able to cash that out instantly with their brand new system. They've teamed up with Team Vitality to be the best in the game, offering you the lowest prices when you're coming to buy and the highest prices when you're using their instant cash out feature. They've got tons of different payout options when you're looking to sell, and their marketplace is filled with all of the best skins for all of the best prices. It's where I go to do all of my skins related items, and you should too, because they've got the best rates out there right now. Now talking about the fever case, it makes a very strong argument right now to actually be on this list. It could make a position just because it is so cheap right now. We're talking about a 90 to 95 price point on average for the Steam community market, which is insanely cheap. It's not even a profitable level for people that are grinding out the Armory Pass, and therefore we have the option of potentially investing into it. Obviously we run into the same situation that we always do, in being that we don't know when the fever case is going to get removed, but right now there's not another case in the Armory, and therefore I don't think that we're in a position where the fever case is close to getting removed. I think that honestly it's a safer place to just go ahead and stash some of these away for the long term, but I don't think it's making my top 5 right now just because of that uncertainty. Number 4 for me, I'm going to have a tie, and I usually don't like to do this at a cheaper level, but we've got the snakebite and the fracture, both of which I think are equivalent and so different in both their own ways. I personally would put the snakebite above the fracture, but also the fracture does have knives, which have seemed to be a little bit in the most interested area as of recently. I think they're both really good options depending on what you're trying to get into. They're your two cheapest options for a cheaper rare case, and right now they're actually sitting at a very similar price point as well. Now if it was just straight up my decision, I would probably go with the snakebite here, but I also think the fracture does have its value, and especially some very specific ways. So if you're trying to get into it, both of these really come down to the fact that obviously you're waiting for a case hype and you're waiting for the longer term, just because there is so much supply on both of these. The fracture has significantly more supply than the snakebite, but the snakebite definitely doesn't have a low supply by any means. Both of these are very long-term investments in my personal opinion of when you're going to start recouping a significant amount of profit, but I honestly think both of them are extremely solid in both their own ways, and neither of them are going to be a bad investment. I just think the snakebite case is a little bit further along in its development, so that's what I would personally go with, but I think they're both solid. Now talking about our active duty cases, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into one of these later, which I think is the most profit potential, but right now these ones are extremely cheap. All across the board we are seeing some very low levels for the active duty cases, except for the Dreams and Nightmares. Dreams and Nightmares still outrageously expensive for an active duty case. I don't think there's any potential investment for me there just because of how expensive it is. You can try and invest in if you really want, but what we've seen from active duty cases is the way to profit is buying in cheap and selling either once they get pumped up or once they get moved into the rare drop pool. I don't think honestly either of these are really in a prime position for the Dreams and Nightmares case, and the rest of the cases are just really cheap. So if you're trying to get into that, but remember they're active duty cases, they can always go cheaper. Number 3 on my list is going to be going to the clutch case, and that's one that I'm really excited for just because of how cheap it actually is. If we want to look at the price point, we're sitting at 90 to 95 cents right now, and I think there's no better value that you can get out there than the clutch case with a good buy order, because then you're below 90 cents. This thing is outrageously cheap for the value that you're going to be getting. Obviously inside of it is nothing special. If you want to look at the ROIs, it's nothing really special, but the best value about it is the fact that the supply on this thing has been depleted significantly compared to your snakebite and your fracture. Obviously it's not one of those super cheap rare cases, but it's also not one of those more developed rare cases where we're seeing a very expensive price point. The clutch case is one that also really likes to have some crazy high peaks for some reason. I don't know how it draws people in, but it always does, and that's a huge advantage as well if that's an area you're interested in. Now talking about your discontinued cases, and in this instance we're talking about the Shattered Web, the Broken Fang, and the Riptide. Honestly these things are very solid, but they're just way too expensive. That's consistently what we talk about, is there's a lot better opportunities inside of a cheaper area when we compare the opportunity cost. These cases are always going to prevail as some of the best, but they're also some of the most expensive out there right now, and I think you can find a lot better value for your dollar if you're trying to get a percentage ROI return somewhere else. Now talking about the best active duty case right now, for me hands down it's going to be the recoil case. Now the recoil case has really shown promise in a couple different areas. First up, obviously, it's the cheapest of them out there right now, and it's consistently on that edge. It was teetering with the Fracture for being the worst one for a while. Obviously, the Fracture is now removed, which is a really good sign for the recoil case. And the best part about it is if we want to look at the unboxing numbers, it's usually lacking behind the rest. That's really good in the odds of it potentially been put into the rare drop pool, but the problem really comes for the fact that obviously this thing is the biggest supplied case in the history of this game. If we want to look at the Fracture case, it was battling for the recoil case for the most supply ever. We can see exactly what happened to the Fracture case afterwards. Obviously, it is stagnated out, but there was still a lot of profit to be made after that removal. If you think the recoil case is next to go, honestly, if you can get it at a really cheap price point, I think it's crazy value, but there's always that risk. Now, when we're talking about the best older rare case, for me, it really comes down to the big three. We've got the Gammas, we've got the Spectrums, and we got the Chromas, all of which are really good depending on which investment you're trying to make. I think they're all relatively similar. I would go either Chroma 3, Gamma 2, or Spectrum 2 if you're trying to make a decision, just because those are the superior of all of their specific groups, but I think they're very solid overall. It really depends on what investment you're trying to get into. If you're looking for a butterfly knife, if you're looking for some Gamma Dopplers, or if you're just looking for overall what you think is going to be going up next, I think it's a great area to check out if you're trying to get into an older rare case. They're just obviously going to be a little bit more expensive. The number 2 on my list is going to be going to the Prisma 1 and the Prisma 2, both of which are similar but different. Once again, I would definitely say the Prisma 2 is my favorite over the Prisma 1, but I would not sell off my Prisma 1 to get Prisma 2s, if that completely makes sense, because they're very similar, but the Prisma 2 always outweighs the Prisma 1 very, very marginally, and therefore we're left in a situation where they're both very good. If we want to talk about it, they're consistently at the top of the unboxing numbers. Obviously, these ones are inflated, but if we want to refer to the old actual ones, we can see it there as well. It's almost always the Prisma 1, the Prisma 2, and another case at the top. Therefore, we're left in this situation. Now, if we want to look at it, we're sitting at nearly a 6-month low for some of these cases, and honestly, I think that they are definitely in a position that they're going to rise again. These things peaked at over $1 more than the price they're currently sitting at, and nothing has fundamentally changed since then. Overall, just the market conditions. And when we're talking about a case, I'm not too worried about the general market conditions. These things are still extremely solid. The unboxing ROIs have never been a real considering factor. For now, talking about my number 1 case right now, I think it's very clear and simple. This is going to be going to the Danger Zone case. The Danger Zone case right now has had a huge slide in price, and that's a really good thing when we're talking about a buyer's market, which is especially what we're in right now, especially for the case market. This thing with a good buyer order, you can get it down into the $1.40 range, which is crazy and super significant value. Obviously, this one's also at a 6-month low, but when we're talking about the fundamentals about it, it's got some really strong pullers. Now, you're not left with anything absolutely insane. Inside of it, you got the Talon knives and you got some desirable skins, but the best part about it is it doesn't really have competition. Obviously, you got the Horizon case, but the Horizon case is a little bit more expensive and therefore not in this specific price range, in my personal opinion. So you're left in a great position long term with the Danger Zone case. It's one that's been solid, going to continue to be solid, and I really like every aspect about it. But that's pretty much all I got. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.